Hi, hi everyone. Good morning. Welcome to DIADEMY IAS. It's our second session regarding the English literature optional paper. In the first session, we discussed about English literature optional. It was actually an orientation session. And here in this class, we start our program, and in this video or in this session we can discuss about the introduction of English literature. And in the last class we already discussed about the syllabus, divisions of papers, its mark distribution, areas, works, authors and all. And almost all areas we discussed in the last class regarding with the English literature optional syllabus. Today we are going to discuss about all over idea, that means a brief description of English literature. That means in order to start the preparation of English literature, we have to understand about the basics of English literature. What is English literature? What are the purpose of literary works? And which are the different periods and its features? So today we can discuss about a brief introduction to the literary works in the different periods and different writers, the purpose of literary works and its impact. Okay, so let's start. We know that in the syllabus, we have two papers. We already discussed we have two papers. Paper 1 for 250 marks, the period between 1600 to 1900. And the paper 2 is also 250 marks, total 500 marks optional paper. Paper 2, 1900 to the period between 1900 to 1919. This was the periodic division of English literature optional paper which mentioned in the UPSC syllabus. Okay, so let's discuss about in detail about this division. First, before discussing about the part and divisions of UPSC syllabus, we have to understand about the basics of English literature. And we start today the basics of English literature because I would like to share almost all basic information regarding with English literature, because our program not only focus the English graduates, because English literature optional is a common optional paper. It can opt any candidate from English background, from all other science or engineering, whatever your field, you can opt English literature as the optional for UPSC mains. So our program mainly focused on the basics level, because our class not only focus on the particular group of people who passed the degree with English literature, but we have to focus. The DIADEMY IAS Academy focus on all the aspirants without any discretion and all. So here let's discuss about the English language and literature paper and what are the relevance of this and what are the beginning period and all. So let's start our session. What is English literature? So here let's start with the basics of English literature. What is English literature? It means that English literature, the word originated from the Latin word. That's the point number 1. The Latin word, it means that the word, what is the Latin word? That is literatura. Okay, literatura is a Latin word. From this word, the word literature originated. The word literature originated from a Latin word. The word is literatura. What is the meaning of this literatura word? It's a Latin word. The meaning is writing organized with the letters. That is the meaning of this word literatura. Means writing organized with the letters. What is organized with the letters? We can, whenever we take a poem, whenever we take a prose or a play, then we can see that there is a structure. There is a structure of presentation there. In case of a play, they have the scene, act, and scene. Act 1, scene 1, act 2, scene 1, like that. And when we take a poem, we can see that different types of poems are there. Mainly we have stanzas. Okay. In case of poem, we have stanza. Okay. So this is the organized way of letter. Okay. Then when we take play or drama, we have act and scene. Okay. Then when we take novels or prose, we have chapters. Okay. Then the different types of poems are there. Sonnets, elegy, ode, like that. So we have to remember that what is this word means that literature, it means that it is an organized way of presentation of letters. That is the base of the word literature. And the example is stanza, act, scene, chapter, etc. Then next we have to understand that what is the purpose of literature? What is the relevance of literature? We know that literature is the reflection of life. That's the next important point we have to keep in our mind, that literature means the reflection of life. What is reflection of life? We know that if we take a poem or a play or a novel, whatever, that a particular literary work mentions about the age of a particular region or a country. For example, when we take Shakespearean plays, from that play we can understood about the different type of administration, different type of customs, way of living, and all. So that is actually, we can say that literature is a reflection of life. That means if a poet or an author write a literary work, it reflects the life of people in a particular region. That is the next meaning we have to keep in our mind. Next is, literature is the mirror of society. Literature is the mirror of society. What is mirror of society? Here, mirror of society means all the literary works explained about is some sort of a reformation. We know that we have the different types of literary works: Reformation stage, Renaissance stage, transition stage, and all. And whatever the literary work presents, it is a mirror of, actually, literary works as a tool to reflect the society. So these are the important points regarding the definition for literature. Okay, so here let's discuss in detail about the next part. So what is literature? We discussed literature means the reflection of life, the mirror of the society, and it's a Latin word, originated from the Latin word. That word is literatura, and means that arrangement of words. So these are the basics of English literature definition. Okay. The next we can discuss about now we discussed about what is English literature. Then next, what was English literature? I said about the current scenario of English literature, but what was English literature? That means in history, what was English literature? So here we can say that actually literary works mainly originated from English people. Undoubtedly, we can say that the western part of the world, the different period and different people, especially some literary people, write their own ideas. Actually, it was during that time it was it's a medium of entertainment, like storytelling, open open drama platforms and all. Actually, in history, English literature actually originated from the English people, that means Western countries. That is the next point. And here it refers the literary works, the different literary works in the history. We can say that it may be novel, short story, poems, fictions, non-fiction and plays. Whatever that is, that was English literature in the past time. Okay. Then next we can discuss about in the past time it was an entertainment. In the past time literature was an entertainment. And later period the literary works function as a tool or function as a, like we already said that mirror, function as a mirror. That means reformation. That is the important word we have to understand, that reformation. Then in the history, when the history we can say that literary works became a tool for reformation of society. For example, we can take the Indian literary works. When we go through the history of India, including Mahatma Gandhi, Jawaharlal Nehru, and all the national leaders, freedom fighters, like Swami Vivekananda, all other famous personalities in the history, they used literary works. They used their works as a medium to communicate with the people. That what actually happened in the Western countries also. It means that in the Western people, especially the Western writers, during the initial time of literary works, it was just an entertainment medium. And then they changed it as a reformation tool. That means a lot of inequalities, superstitious beliefs existed in the Western countries, and the literary works and through the literary works, poems, drama, novels, and all, the writers tried to convey or tried to communicate with the people through their literary works. So that's what we can say, that in the past times, English literary works was a tool to change the society. That means reformation. So that's the next point. The next is, in the past time, all writers in the history of English literature, we can say that, including Geoffrey Chaucer. We know that Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English literature, that we will discuss now. And here, all the English writers used their medium or used their literary works to discuss the social issues, whatever the social issues relating with the woman issue, relating with the inequalities, discretions, caste partiality, like that. All the matters they discussed in the literary works. So these are the important points we have to remember about the past of English literature. So we already discussed about the two sides of English literature. First, I discussed about what is English literature. Here in this slide, I discussed what was English literature. So that is the important point we have to remember regarding the history of English literature. Okay. Then next, we can discuss about father of English literature. Before we studying in depth of English literary works for UPSC exam, we have to understand about the history of English literature. That is, who was the father of English literature. We can say that Geoffrey Chaucer Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English literature. Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English. His period was 1343 to 1400. His period was 1343 to 1400. Geoffrey Chaucer was considered as the father of English literature. Father of English literature. That's an important point. Okay. Then next, which was the first literary work? We know that we have Beowulf is a literary work, and actually, but in the old period of English history, there was a literary works, different literary works. But as per the historians and literary experts says that Canterbury Tales was the work of Geoffrey Chaucer. His work, it's a poem. Canterbury Tales is a poem, the collection of poems, and that work was considered as the first authentic literary work in the English literature. So, what is Canterbury Tales? Actually, this Canterbury Tales is like a storytelling poem, the collection of poem, and we know that Canterbury is a city in England. Okay, it's a city in England, and during that time, Geoffrey Chaucer wrote this work, and through this work, actually, the history of English literature started. That's an important point. Then actually, the next point is that what was the background of Geoffrey Chaucer, the father of English literature? He served as a soldier and diplomat for English crown. We know that Britain, we know that in the history also, India also faced the power of British government, and we know that the Indian history also mentioned that. In the past period as well, Britain was a powerful country with all the infrastructure, with all the facilities. And here we can say that during the time of British Crown also, Geoffrey Chaucer functioned as a soldier or diplomat under the British government. That was his background. Then the next peculiarity, why Geoffrey Chaucer was different that time? Why Geoffrey Chaucer why the world considered Geoffrey Chaucer as the father of English literature? He used vernacular English. What is vernacular English? That's an important point we have to keep in our mind. Vernacular is a term. What is vernacular? Vernacular. Okay. Vernacular means native. It means that native. For example, we can say that we have Hindi, the language Hindi. We can divide Hindi into the real Hindi and vernacular Hindi. What is vernacular Hindi? It means that the language Hindi speaks by the particular region, a special region of the regional people, a regional Hindi, regional language. That means we know that when we speak a regional language, our spoken language is different from the actual text or actual presentation of language. So that was the peculiarity of Geoffrey Chaucer work. He used very simple language. His work Canterbury Tales was written in very, very simple language. It easily understandable, or it can easily understand by the common people. That's what Geoffrey Chaucer became the father of English literature, because his works can read just mere a single person, a simple person, uneducated, not at all a high class, not for the high class people. Like at the same time, we can say that Latin and French, Latin language, we know that in English, We have English language is actually originated from the different language influences like Latin, French and all. Because the common people never know Latin and French. For example, we have the Sanskrit in India. In the past, we can say that in Indian history, we have the Sanskrit language only studied by the high class people only. That means the highest proportion, like Brahmin, Kshatriya community, specifically for that people. Like that in England also, Latin and French languages are restricted for the high level community, not for the lower people. But Geoffrey Chaucer used his work. He used vernacular or simple English language. It can easily accessible to the common people in Britain. So that was the particular point we have to keep in our mind. That was the peculiarity of his work, the Canterbury Tales. Then next, the important poets like Edmund Spenser and John Donne. These John Donne and Edmund Spenser, including these writers and different writers in English literature, gradually inspired Geoffrey Chaucer's work. So these are the important points relating with Geoffrey Chaucer. We can just revise once again. What was the role of Geoffrey Chaucer in English literature? The point number 1, Geoffrey Chaucer was considered as the father of English literature. Why he is special in that time? During the beginning of or during the old English literary time, in England or in Britain, the Britain area, literary works or all written documents mostly concentrate on Latin and French language. Actually, this language only for the highest or educated people can only use this language in that time. And during that time, there was a literary work named that Canterbury Tales. That work was wrote by Geoffrey Chaucer, and that work was in vernacular English form. What is vernacular form? It's a common English, very simple English language he used in his literary work. So it can access or it can read all common people. So that was the important points regarding with Geoffrey Chaucer as the father of English literature. The next, we can discuss about Chaucer's literary career. Here, we already discussed that his work named, the work of Geoffrey Chaucer is Canterbury Tales. Actually, it is a collection of stories regarding with the story, a lot of stories regarding with the travel. That's like a travelogue. Here we already said that it's a city and a group of people traveling to the city, and the story mentions about their experiences and all. Okay, that we will discuss in the next class. And this collection consists of 24 tales. 24 tales. It includes 24 tales. It's a collection of story. That is the point. 24 tales collection. Okay. Then next point is the Canterbury Tales written by Geoffrey Chaucer was the portrayal of medieval society. What is medieval society? We know that we have old period, medieval period, modern period. And through this collection of short story, Geoffrey Chaucer explained about the life of middle society. That is the next point. Next is, this short story includes love, honor, morality, and human nature. That means through this work, Geoffrey Chaucer explained about the society which exists in the medieval time in England and what the society demands, what the people demand and all, their thoughts, their desires, their wishes, all are included in this work. Then through this work, Geoffrey Chaucer explained about the social complexities of medieval England. What is social complexity? That means that we can say that that time also in England there was a hierarchy between the higher community and the lower community. And we already said that the higher community or the very important community, that means rich people, normally enjoys the luxurious life. And the common people are there in England and they are restricted from languages as well, like Latin, French and all. And here Geoffrey Chaucer wrote his work in common English and it accessible to all the common people in England. Then actually during that time Britain was in a complex society. Like currently we can also say that there was a hierarchy. There is a hierarchy between the higher and lower community. That's also he reflected in this work. And next point is Canterbury Tales, the work of Geoffrey Chaucer, also explained about corruption, hypocrisy, then virtues of his society. So these are the important points regarding with the Canterbury Tales. So here in this slide we discussed about what are the content or what are the features of Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer. Here we can once again revise the point is that what was the content of or what was the theme of the work Canterbury Tales. We know that Canterbury Tales was a collection of stories including 24 tales, and this tale was the reflection of middle class people or medieval society in England. And through this work Geoffrey Chaucer explained about the complexity of the people in England, corruption in England, hypocrisy in England, then hierarchical differentiate partiality in England. Okay, so these are the important points we have to keep in our mind regarding with Canterbury Tales. Canterbury Tales is considered as the first authentic literary work. We know that before Canterbury Tales we had the literary work, Beowulf and all. Okay, so that we will discuss in the old literary that will be discussed in the next class. Okay, so now I am discussing about the father of English literature and his work and its impact only. The next, why Geoffrey Chaucer known as father of English literature? We know that there was a reason behind Geoffrey Chaucer why Geoffrey Chaucer became the father of English literature. So this is a relevant point we have to remember when we start preparing English literature as an optional paper. So in the different question paper we can say that we can see the question from the previous question from UPSC. UPSC asked different perspective of question regarding with the history also. So here, why Geoffrey Chaucer known as father of English literature? The reason is okay. Gitanjali, clear? Clear? Any doubt? Okay, if you have any doubt or anything want to ask? Clear? If you have any doubt, please do text. Okay. 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 So next we can discuss about why is Geoffrey Chaucer known as father of English literature. So in this 4 points we can elaborate the answer. Okay. In this way we have to prepare for UPSC exam. We have the small points, and then keep this point in your mind and then continue. So in this way of preparation is useful for literature preparation, not for like other GS and all. We need not to bother about the fact and figures. We have only stories only. Okay, so these are the 4 points. That was the reason. So let's discuss. First point is elevating English as a literary language. Point number 1. Why Geoffrey Chaucer considered as the father of English literature? Point number 1 is that we know that Geoffrey Chaucer was a pioneer. Geoffrey Chaucer was a pioneer of English literature. That means that what is elevating? Elevating means uplift. Elevating means uplift. That means we already said that Geoffrey Chaucer used vernacular language. What is vernacular language? Common language. That is vernacular language. Common English or normal English. So it can easily accessible to the common people in England. That was the first reason. Because that time we have Latin language, French and all. And we said that Latin and French, this language was high-class language in that time. That means only high-class people use this language. Like the Sanskrit in our past. We know that in India, we can see the history. In India, Sanskrit was prohibited for the common people or inferior people. Only Brahmins and Kshatriya, like high-class people, only use Sanskrit in the history of India. Okay, so like that in England, Latin and French language were there, but actually it was prohibited. And that time, Geoffrey Chaucer came and wrote his work, Canterbury Tales, in very simple language, vernacular language. That was the main reason. Okay, that's why Geoffrey Chaucer became more popular, and he became the familiar with all common people. All common people in England received his work. They could easily understood. So these are the important points we have to understand. The next one is popularizing vernacular literature. Because till this work actually Latin and French language were famous in England. And when this Canterbury Tales introduced by the father of the English literature, that means Geoffrey Chaucer, common people accepted it. So that's what vernacular literature became popular in that time. So that's why Geoffrey Chaucer considered as the best writer in that time, and he communicated with the people, and he used his literary work to communicate the social issues, to communicate with the hierarchical partialities and all. Next is revolutionary narrative structure. What is a revolutionary narrative structure? Here, revolutionary narrative means that Canterbury Tales explains about the story of pilgrims, because a group of people or pilgrims travel to Canterbury. We know that Canterbury is a city in England. So during that time, Geoffrey Chaucer tried to communicate with the people relating with their own issues. So that was the third reason. And fourth one is realism. What is realism? Actually, that time also Geoffrey Chaucer used realism. What is the meaning of here realism? It means that accurate or actual presentation. Actual presentation. Okay, these are the important reasons. These are the important reasons Geoffrey Chaucer became the father of English literature. So these are the important points we have to keep in our mind when we prepare this area, the history of English literature. Clear? Gitanjali, clear? Anyone from online? Clear? Okay, the next we can discuss about various fathers in English literature. Okay, we already discussed about what is English literature, what was English literature. Then who was Geoffrey Chaucer? What was the role of Geoffrey Chaucer in English literature? And what was the role of Canterbury Tales in English literature? And why Geoffrey Chaucer became the father of English literature. And next we can discuss about the different genre of English literature. We know that we have plays, we have poems, we have novels, sonnets, different types of different genre of literary works are there. So here we can discuss about the different literary genre and their fathers. Okay, so father of English literature we already discussed, that is Geoffrey Chaucer. Father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer. Then father of English drama. Who was the father of English drama? William Shakespeare. Okay, the father of, we only studied that Geoffrey Chaucer was the father of English literature. English literature. In this English literary works or in this English literature, we have different divisions. So the first division is drama. Who was the father? William Shakespeare. Next is epic poetry. Father of epic poetry. Who was the father of epic poetry? What is epic poem? Epic poem means a long narrative poem. Okay, a long narrative poem explains about adventure, or extraordinary experiences and all. So here epic poetry, who was the father of epic poetry? That is John Milton. Father of epic poetry, John Milton. Next is father of English satire. Next model. What is satire? Satire means irony. Satire means irony or humor. Okay. Irony or humor way of presentation. That means a writer used his literary works to mock anything in the society in a humorous way. That is satire. Who was the father of satire? Alexander Pope. Okay, Alexander Pope. The next is father of English novel. Father of English novel, Daniel Defoe. Father of English novel is Daniel Defoe. So we already discussed about who was the father of English literature, that is Geoffrey Chaucer. And additionally, we are discussing about various fathers in English literature. Father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer; drama, William Shakespeare; epic poetry, John Milton; satire, Alexander Pope; then novel, Daniel Defoe. Then next, who was the father of satirical prose? Is another important term in literature, in syllabus also. Father of satirical prose, Jonathan Swift. Father of satirical prose, Jonathan Swift. Okay, father of satirical prose. Then next is, what is metaphysical poetry? Metaphysical poetry, the father of metaphysical poetry. Who is the father of metaphysical poetry? What is metaphysical poetry? Metaphysical poem means a group of poems or collection of poems. Group of poems or collection of poems, or group of literary works. Okay, literary works which intellectually, actually it is a presentation is intellectual. Intellectual. The presentation is intellectual. That means not based on emotion. It based on some sort of intellectual thinking. Okay. So father of metaphysical poetry was John Donne. Then father of English prose. Father of English prose, Sir Thomas More. Father of English prose, Sir Thomas More. Then father of English essay. Who was the father of English essay? Who was the father of English essay? Here, father of English essay is Francis Bacon. Next, father of English criticism. What is criticism? Critical works. What is criticism? Criticism means we know that we have, we have the film critic and all, we have literary critic, whatever. Criticism means that a group of writers or a group of thinkers who analyze the literary works and its perspectives. So, father of literary criticism is, or English criticism is, Sir Philip Sidney. Next, father of English sonnet. What is sonnet? Sonnet means small poems, that is sonnet. Sir Thomas Wyatt. Okay, father of English sonnet is Sir Thomas Wyatt. Then next, father of American short story. Who was the father of American short story? That is Nathaniel Hawthorne was the father of American short story. Then father of English poetry. Who was the father of English poetry? John Legate. John Legate was the father of English literature, poetry. Then father of historical novel. We know that we have different types of novels are there. And historical novel. Who was the father of historical novel? Sir Walter Scott. Sir Walter Scott was the father of historical novel. Next, who was the father of Victorian age? That means we know that we have a different ages. Romantic age, Victorian age, like that. We have a different ages of literature that we will discuss in the upcoming classes. And who was the father of Victorian age? Alfred Tennyson. Then who was the father of English novel? Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was the father of English novel. Okay, so these are the important history personalities. The last list is father of English romantic poetry. Father of English romantic poetry. We already said that we have a lot of ages, and romanticism was an age in English literature. Romantic age. Actually, it is a moment, and at the same time, we can say that romantic period is considered as the very, very attractive period in English literature, because most of the people are interested in this period, and almost all works in this period was famous. All the works were famous in that time. Then the father of English romantic poetry, William Wordsworth. We have different poems in UPSC syllabus. William Wordsworth poem. Okay. The next is father of English ode. Father of English ode. What is ode? What is ode means praising. Okay. Ode means praising. Praising something or someone. That is ode. Praising something or someone. That is ode. Okay. So, father of English ode, John Keats. The next, father of English printing. Who was the father of English printing? William Caxton. Then, who was the father of modern directive story? Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. Then, father of fantasy literature. Father of fantasy literature. What is fantasy literature? Fantasy means talking about animals. Okay, like animation. We know that we are familiar with this type of movies and all. So fantasy, we have different fantasy stories in English literature. So who was the father of fantasy literature? J.R.R. Tolkien. And next is father of science fiction. Who was the father of science fiction? That is H.G. Wells. Who was the father of dystopian literature? What is dystopian literature? Dystopian literature means that speculation. That means speculative fiction. That is dystopian literature. Speculative fictions. Okay, speculative fictions. That is dystopian literature. That is the meaning of dystopian literature. Speculation. What is speculation? That means through this work, the writer speculates, or the writer explained about some future incidences. That means indicates some sort of supernatural like that. So the writer tried to convey some sort of speculations. So like similar with a fascinating story. So that is dystopian literature. Who was the father of dystopian literature? George Orwell. Then who was the father of English comedy? Who was the father of English comedy? Ben Jonson. Ben Jonson was the father of English comedy. The last one is, who was the father of English tragedy? Tragedy. That is Christopher Marlowe. Christopher Marlowe was the father of English tragedy, literary works. So these are the important various fathers in English literature. Okay, I think we discussed about the important movements and important areas or important works and their fathers we already discussed now. The next we can move into the different ages. It's a very, very important for the UPSC preparation. Actually, UPSC asked only 1600 onwards. Okay, actually UPSC syllabus we have 1600 onwards syllabus, but in syllabus we can't see that Anglo-Saxon period, old literary period and all, but we have to prepare that. Okay, because the question, some literary works based questions are generalized. So when we study or when we prepare a drama, Shakespearean play like that, there was a reference in the old period. So we have to be updated in that area also. So here, let's look into the period-wise classification. It's easy to remember. Here we have the old period of English. We have old period of English. That means 450 to 1066. So this is old English period, and this period is called as Anglo-Saxon. This period is called as Anglo-Saxon. So this area we will discuss tomorrow. And tomorrow, the next class onwards, we will discuss these, each and every periods separately or independently we will discuss. Okay. Then next period is 1066 to 1500. That is Middle English period. Middle English period. Middle English period. The next is 1500 to 1660. We have Renaissance period. We have Renaissance period. 1500 to 1660 Renaissance period. 1558 to 1603 Elizabethan age. Elizabethan age. 1603 to 1625 Jacobean age. 1625 to 1649 Caroline age. 1649 to 1660 Commonwealth period. This is not important for our exam. And here, actually UPSC questions, we have to understand that this point onwards we have syllabus 1600 to 1900. Okay, so from this period to this period we have to be more focused, because from this period to this period we have syllabus, UPSC syllabus. So we have to prepare these areas more importantly we have to prepare. At the same time, we have a limited syllabus. We have a limited list of plays and authors and poems and authors. Okay, so we need not to go through all in depth. But here I discuss about only ages, not we need not to refer all the works in this period. It's only the periodical division of English literature. So whenever we prepare this periodical division, we will understand about the peculiarity of that period, that time peoples, their life, their habits, their rituals and all. So we can write with the help of that information. It will be more attractive. It will be more good for our examination. Okay, so that's what we choose this list. The next one is 1600 to 1785. That is neoclassical period. Then 1660 to 1700 Restoration period. 1700 to 1745 Augustan age or Age of Pop. Age of Pop. The next is 1745 to 1785 Age of Sensibility. Then 1785 to 1830 Romantic period. Romantic period. Here in this period we have W.B. Yeats, we have Wordsworth, Shelley and all. And 1832 to 1901 we have Victorian period. Victorian period. Then 1848 to 1860 the pre-Raphaelite period. 1880 to 1901 Aestheticism and Decadence. 1901 to 1914 we have Edwardian period. 1910 to 1936 we have Georgian period. 1914 to 1945 we have modern period. Okay, the syllabus mentioned about, the UPSC syllabus mentioned about this 1990. Okay, so we have the two divisions, paper 1 and paper 2. Paper 1 1600 to 1900 from this period, and the second we have second paper that from two we can say that 1900 to 1990. So this is the period, modern literary period, that means modern English literature. So these are the classification of literary periods in English literature. Periodic classification of English literature. Okay. So starts from Geoffrey Chaucer. Normally Geoffrey Chaucer time is considered as the beginning of English literature. But at the same time, we have to keep in our mind that before Geoffrey Chaucer, there was English literature, but it was not recorded, and that's why Geoffrey Chaucer is considered as the father of English literature. And from that period, old period, that period is known as Anglo-Saxon. And from 450 to 1945 period, we have different ages in English literature. And in UPSC perspective, we can say that 1600 onwards, we have the paper 1 UPSC mains examination, and the paper 2 we have 1900 to 1919. So in total, we can say that these are the periodic classification of English literature, and in these different periods, we have different writers, different types of different genre of English works, poems, plays and all. So these are the basic introduction. These are the basic thing we have to keep in our mind when we prepare English literature as optional paper. The next, we can discuss about the history of English literature. That means how the literary works or how English literature began. So here we can understand that 6000 BC. BC means we know that before Christ. Before Christ. So let's look into the history of English literature now. Then English literature mainly based on the history of Britain. History of Britain. Okay, that means England. So here you can say that the map, England. Actually, the work, English literature, all the English works began from this country, England. So here we can mention about 6000 BC. What was the importance of 6000 BC? Here we know that in history, in literary history, some historians or literary experts mentioned that there was a flood happened in Europe in 6000 BC. That flood was the cause between the England from the Europe. England was separated. England was separated in that flood. Okay. The next 4000 BC, the people in England started cultivation. That means agriculture. The people in England started agriculture. Mainly they cultivated wheat and barley. Okay. Then in this England, we can say that some border countries, the near countries, Ireland here, Scotland here, Wales here. Okay. So these are the neighboring regions in that time. And from this area, people reached to England. Okay. That means actually they were tribes. Celtic warriors and Britons was the name. Okay. Celtic warriors and Britons were the group. Actually they were tribals. They reached in England. Okay. The next, Britain defeated the Celtic warriors. That means actually Britons and Britons. Actually it's not Britain, it's Briton. Briton and Celtic are the different community. They reached to England in 4000 BC period. And gradually there was a clash between these two groups, and normally this Briton group defeated Celtic warriors. And these Celtic warriors from England, they returned to Scotland because their own religious issues, some sort of issues are there in Scotland, and they did not survive in England at the same time. And the protest of this or the clash with the Britons, this Celtic warriors returned back to Scotland. Then Celtic people shifted to Scotland. Then 300 BC was a period of wars. In that time, then again the 300 BC time, there were different wars or battles happened in the region, and we know that in 54 BC Romans conquered England, or Romans reached in England, and there was a different wars or battles happened in England. That was the history. That is the old history. Okay, we know that Julius Caesar, a Roman king, Julius Caesar, we know that we have a Julius Caesar, a play by Shakespeare also. He was a king, he was a great king, and this Roman king Julius Caesar also came to this place, England. That also included in the history. The next, Romans, that means Romans involvement in England. Also, that's what we have seen, that we have different language influence, Latin, French, like that. Okay, Greek. A lot of language influence in England because the different types of community reached in England. They tried to survive there, and there was a clash between the group. And finally, Britons. We know that we have Britons. Actually, these from this name, the name came. That is Britain. Okay, that is the history of this England. That was the history of this European region. Then next, 450 AD. Next, 450 AD. Anglo-Saxon community. Actually, they were German tribes. They are all are tribal groups. Okay. Actually, Anglo-Saxon group came there. From that Anglo-Saxon, we got the history of English literature. Actually, Anglo-Saxon time onwards, the different recorded literary works came, okay, introduced. Okay, so that was the main point we have to remember when preparing this history. Then that time, that two important works in English history, that means Beowulf and Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. This is the work number 1. This is work number 1, and this is work number 2. These are the two different literary works in that time, Anglo-Saxon time. Beowulf and Anglo-Saxon. Actually, these literary works is not mentioned in the history. Why not mentioned? Because these literary works are anonymous. That means only the story mentioned in the history. That means Beowulf was an adventure story. But the English literary history not mentioned about who was the author of these literary works. So these are the important historical background of English literature during the ancient times or old times. Okay, so we discussed about what was the beginning of English literature. So once again we can revise slowly. Point number 1, we have a group of people in the European region, and suppose you just imagine or you just visualize this event. There was a flood happened in 6000 BC in European region, and that flood, heavy flood, England separated from Europe. That's the first historical point. And England became an isolated land area, and that into that land area, different communities approach that particular land area. The community is, we know that Roman invasions there, Anglo-Saxons there. Okay, so that time was the beginning of language influence. That means we know that when we read some terms, We can now also we used these words originated from Latin word. These words originated from Greek word, like that. So different communities arrived in England, and their language also influenced English. Like, we can say example. We have in India different types of language communities, right? That means Dravidian language. That means Hindi language influence. We have Sanskrit language influence. Tamil. We have a South Indian languages are a community. We have a community, and also the connection with the Hindi and Sanskrit and all. So like that, in English also, different regions and different people's language influence. That is Latin, French, Greek word, like that. So that was the beginning of English language. And there was Anglo-Saxon community. Actually, Anglo-Saxon was a settlement. Okay, Anglo-Saxon was a settlement during that time. And from that settlement, we can understand that English language developed. And that time also, we have a literary work that is named as Beowulf and Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. Actually, during the Anglo-Saxon period, there was a literary work, but it's not recorded because nobody knows that who was the author of this literary work. And later that, we have Geoffrey Chaucer, and we discussed that Geoffrey Chaucer became the father of English literature. Geoffrey Chaucer's work, Canterbury Tales, was considered as the first literary work in England. Okay, so these are the important points we have to remember regarding with the history of English literature. Then next we can discuss about Anglo-Saxon period. We know that Anglo-Saxon period in English literature spanned from 410th century to 1066. Okay, so these are the first point we have to understand here. Anglo-Saxon was a settlement. Point number one, it's a settlement. Anglo-Saxon was a settlement. And this settlement period known as 410th century and 1066 century. That was the settlement period. And next is, this is the foundational period of English identity and language. That means Anglo-Saxon period. Anglo-Saxon period. This period is considered as the foundational or the beginning. Okay, foundational means beginning of English language and literature. English language and literature ideas. So that's the next point. Next is, who were Anglo-Saxons? Who were Anglo-Saxons? It means they were from Germanic Saxons, Angles and Jutes. Actually, they were the groups. Anglo-Saxons were the groups. Group of people, group of people. They were the group of people, Germanic, Saxons, Angles and Jutes. These are the three different groups we have to remember here. Okay. So these are the important points regarding with Anglo-Saxon period. Anglo-Saxon period. And here we know that who were Saxons, who were Angles and who were Jutes. Here we can say that Angles means Anglo-Saxon. Angles means fisherman group. Okay. They were fisherman group. They were fisherman group. Okay. We already said that Anglo-Saxon is a community of three different groups. Angles means fisherman group. Okay. Then who were Angles? We already Anglo-Saxons. Angles, fisherman group. Saxons, Angles. Then next one is Jutes. Okay. Then next is Saxons means, sorry, Angles means fishermen, Saxon means warriors. Warriors, and who were Jutes? Jutes means it's a land. Jutes means a mainland. They were from mainland. They were from a mainland area. So these are the important points we have to remember, who were Anglo-Saxons. When we prepare for the English literature history, we can say that it's beginning from the Anglo-Saxon period. Anglo-Saxon means, Angles means the community, fisherman group, and Saxon means warriors, and Jutes means people from Jute mainland. Okay, these are the important points. Then next, when we prepare for the history of English literature, we can divide the English literature in two perspectives. That means we already said that the father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer, father of English literature. We already said that father of English literature, Geoffrey Chaucer. And when the literary studies indicate that the history of English literature mainly divided into two divisions. That means Geoffrey Chaucer as the center, and some historians or some literary experts say that about Shakespeare. That means some are said that Shakespeare as the center of history, the history of literature. That means before Shakespeare and after Shakespeare. But most of the historians and literary experts says that Geoffrey Chaucer as the central period. That means English literature before Geoffrey Chaucer and after Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay. Before Geoffrey Chaucer, we have Anglo-Saxon settlement and Norman period. That's an important point. Norman people arrived into England. Okay. So we have two divisions of literature history. That means, based on Geoffrey Chaucer, there was an English literature, or there was an English literary background before the Geoffrey Chaucer and after the Geoffrey Chaucer. And what is before the Geoffrey Chaucer period? It means that a period where Anglo-Saxon settlement in England and Norman approach or Norman arrival in England. And after Geoffrey Chaucer, that is actually we have to study for UPSC mains syllabus. That means after Geoffrey Chaucer we have a different periods like Elizabethan age, Victorian period, Romantic period and all. So this is the division of landmark between the Old English and the contemporary English literature. That is before Geoffrey Chaucer and after Geoffrey Chaucer. Okay, so these are the important points we discussed about the literature, about the literary background and all. So here, today we analyzed about the importance of literature and what is literature, what are the different periods and the persons behind its origin. That means the fathers of the different literary terms and the literary genre and all. So these are the basics of, these are the introduction for the English literature. And in the next session we will discuss about the old English period specifically. Then thank you. Then see you in the next session. Thank you.